Now, about 14 years after the original manga ended, and 13 since the anime finished airing, Ryuk and the Death Note are back, and they're back with a bang, and Donald Trump. It's been amazing to see just how much love everybody still has for the series, and I'm glad that Tsugumi Oba and Takeshi Obata were able to deliver something that just about everybody could enjoy. The two are arguably the greatest manga duo in history, and have created two mega hits in the form of Death Note and the unique manga creating battle series, Bakuman. Two series that I personally love and have both read and watched many times, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them too. They also have a really interesting new manga that's currently released monthly that I think a lot of people are sleeping on, but I'll get into that later. For now, let's talk Death Note because there's a lot to talk about. This new Death Note story tackles the question that fans have for years been discussing. Could you use the Death Note in the modern world? The setting of the original story is based in the early 2000s, a time where the internet was a new tool, a time without social media, and a time when surveillance technology was, compared to today, still in its infancy. Our main character is Minoru Tanaka, a Japanese middle school student who is unexpectedly visited by Ryuk, and unlike Light Yagami, who just happened to find the Death Note, he was chosen. Right at the start of this new story, on the very first page of the manga, we see a Shinigami who is likely actually Midora, the Shinigami that was the focus of the previous one-shot featuring Kira, return the Death Note, and state that she failed to succeed in the way Ryuk did. Right off the bat, with this Shinigami stating that she failed to replicate Ryuk's success, it seems that word of everything Ryuk had done on Earth had spread in the Shinigami world, and at the very least, in the mind of some, what he did was considered a success. And like how this Shinigami failed to replicate this success, based on the reaction to his resurfacing years later in 2019, it seems no one who's been in possession of a Death Note on Earth since Light has managed to do enough damage to gain the attention of the world. To cause an international manhunt and shake fear into the body of millions, maybe even billions, is a tall feat to beat, and no one has since Light Yagami done that. There is a 6-year gap between when Ryuk returns to Earth and when he meets Minoru, implying that he'd been trying for a while before he'd finally found a suitable user. We know that Death Notes have before Light made their way to Earth, causing damage, but again, nothing similar to the damage Light inflicted. We don't know how many Shinigami attempted to recreate the damage Ryuk caused in the years since Light, but considering they all failed to be internationally recognized with a power this great, I'd assume what happened in these instances is very similar to the ones that came before Light Yagami. When we were first introduced to the Shinigami world, it was a place of boredom and laziness. It was so bad in fact that many Shinigami would fail to remember to fulfill their only real task of remembering to write a human's name down, which served as a way to extend their own lifespan through causing death. While Ryuk dropped his Death Note on Earth last time due to boredom, he did it this time around due to a craving for more apples. I suppose after being reminded of the taste by Midora, like an addict, he just had to have more. This is where things take an interesting turn. At the beginning of the original stories, after meeting Ryuk, Light being, well, Light, asked why he was chosen to be the user of the Death Note. This notion of being chosen was quickly shot down by Ryuk, who stated that all he did was drop the notebook and it just happened to end up in the hands of Light. This time around, however, reflecting on his previous success with Light, a model teenager, a top student in Japan, Ryuk actually goes the route of choosing a user instead of merely dropping the Death Note and leaving it up to chance. This decision would lead to Minoru Tanaka becoming the story's main character, a character that some fans are already claiming is smarter than Light Yagami. Despite being a poor student in the words of his teachers, possibly due to a lack of effort, thanks to his high scores on IQ-type tests, he's also described by his teachers as someone that could be the smartest middle schooler in all of Japan, something that Ryuk overheard, leading to him making the decision to choose Minoru. His intelligence was something that Minoru himself was quick to shut down because in his own words, the people who are smart are actually solving problems that pertain to the future. Meanwhile, he just spends too much time watching shows about IQ diagnostics and playing IQ test apps. He's a humble kid, and from the start, I think most of us would agree that like Light, this character seemed pretty likable. This sudden conversation that was triggered by Ryuk hitting him on the head with the Death Note would go on for a bit at this park before later continuing at the house of Minoru. Once there, Ryuk would give the whole breakdown of what the Death Note is, explaining that this is the power of Kira. Despite his young age, surprisingly, Minoru was already very much familiar with the history of Kira, mostly thanks to classes in school like ethics and world history. And it's here that we get more insight into the world post-Kira. In the textbooks and classes, Kira is described as someone that was a mass murdering terrorist and someone that was evil. But of course, some believed him to be a god, And this is nothing new because at the end of the original series, we saw a cult type of group gathering to send prayers for Kira. Carrying on though, Minoru and Ryuk continued their talk, first discussing the rules of the notebook after Ryuk translated it to Japanese, and then enjoying an apple before going into more details on everything Kira did. The talk would then take an interesting turn, going into something that fans have talked about for years now. Could light succeed again in the modern world? With security cameras on every street, car dash cameras, and the ability of the government to listen in on calls and read text messages, could light succeed? In the words of Minoru, Kira would come up with a way to do it that still works in this day and age. To which I agree. Light was very intelligent, and all the modern world would mean is new rules to abide by in this game for power. Rules that I'm sure he could adapt to. After seeing Minoru express that he's sure Kira would find a way to succeed, Ryuk takes this opportunity to directly ask if Minoru thought he could do it also, to which he was visibly taken back once realizing that Ryuk wanted him to do the same things Light had done years ago. After being handed such power, Light was quickly overwhelmed with curiosity, quickly overwhelmed by the idea of having the ability to end someone's life from a distance. From there, he would rationalize his acts by telling himself that he was doing the world a favor, that he was the only one capable of doing it. Minoru, on the other hand, despite being younger, was not quickly drawn in by the allure of the Death Note. This right here and the rest of Minoru's time with the Death Note and the Death Note theory that I've seen over the years that suggests Shinigami and the notebook literally possess its owner and cause them to lose their humanity, becoming a monster. Now, thanks to this one shot, we know for sure Light was definitely just an ambitious guy with a god complex. Minoru though, after taking a few hours to think about his decision, after realizing if he doesn't take the book, it'll still end up in the hands of someone else who might bring harm, came to a surprising decision. Ryuk would have the Death Note returned to him, in the process erasing Minoru's memories, and would 2 years later return, and at which point Minoru would be ready to use the Death Note. The 2 years would pass, and Ryuk kept his word to return with the notebook to Minoru, who now 2 years later looked even more like an e-boy than before. After regaining his memories from 2 years ago, the plan would be revealed, that master plan being to sell the Death Note. The sale would be done through auctioning it on live TV, specifically Sakura TV, the TV station that was the site of a lot of Light's earlier antics, and done using Ryuk and messages written on paper to transfer the message to the world. Taking advantage of the distance a Shinigami can have from the possessor of the notebook, the announcement that the power of Kira would be put up for auction through Twitter would rock the world, and immediately cause a commotion. In no time, the bidding price had gone up to $3 million US, and word had reached Nier, who still currently holds the position of L. And for the rest of the video, to put respect on the man, I'll refer to him as such. Rest in peace to the original though. While discussing the return of the notebook, it was him who decided to call this new Death Note user Akira. Bidding offers would continue increasing dramatically, while Minoru, now unbeknownst to him labeled Akira, went about his daily life, while watching the world around him erupt with anxiousness as he continued to send messages through the station using Ryuk. The crazy thing is that there was nothing L or any other investigator could do to stop this auction. L himself, even pretty early on, stated that this plan was very well thought out and that their only hope is to intercept the handoff of the notebook after the auction. When the idea of catching Minoru was first mentioned, L himself had to reply asking what they mean because technically no crime had been committed. Using the book to kill would be a crime, but selling it alone is not, meaning that even if he were caught, Minoru could not be arrested. Bidding prices would continue to increase. Things were going so well that Minoru himself was nervous. Offers would escalate to levels beyond individual buyers and instead be groups, and then even further to nations bidding against each other. Once we passed that level, Twitter was out of the picture and we have no more space for memes. Instead, Minoru would have nations bidding in the media through representatives. Meanwhile, bidding prices would pass $500 billion and then $1 trillion. While all this went down, there was nothing they could do to hunt for Minoru. Even L himself was enjoying the mess created from watching nations bid against each other for the power of Kira. Once the offer reached a quadrillion yen, yes, a quadrillion, the same amount as the national debt of Japan, the auction ended. With the end of the auction approaching, L, as well as all of us to be honest, were wondering just how Minoru would remain anonymous and receive such a large sum of money. The answer would be shocking, not only for the world, but for all of us reading. With the announcement of the US and its leader, an obvious Donald Trump-based character, being the winner of the auction, also came an announcement that the money was to be paid in equal amounts to every person with a Yotsuba Bank of Japan savings account registered in Tokyo and age 60 and under. Even if there were 1 million eligible account holders, that would still be 1 billion yen per person, That's $9 million each roughly. Obviously a life-changing amount of money for many, causing Kira to again be praised as a god. I guess money really is the key to love. But anyway, on top of that, once the Death Note is passed to its new owner, the current Kira would lose all memories of these events, making it impossible for him to be caught, giving Nier his first loss since becoming L. All was not good though. Just before the day of the auction's conclusion, Ryuk was visited by another Shinigami by the name of Harmonia Justin. With him came the message that after Ryuk is able to leave the side of his human, he needs to report to the Shinigami King, also called the Old Man by Shinigami. No other details were known at this time, but you know, when the king himself is calling you, there's a problem. After receiving confirmation that the US government did pay up, Minoru made it clear to Ryuk to never approach him again, no matter what. He was set on living a normal, happy life. The notebook was returned to Ryuk and then brought to the President of the United States, President Donald Trump, which is still crazy to say. Upon arriving at the White House, Ryuk was quick to make it clear that the Shinigami King had gotten angry at him for allowing Minoru to sell the notebook, causing a new rule to be created. A human who sells or buys the Death Note in the human world will die. The seller will die when they receive the money, and the buyer will die when they receive the Death Note, putting the president in a tough spot. If he accepts the book, he will die. However, the book will remain and be found by another powerful member of the government and benefit the nation. If he doesn't accept the book, he will live, but the money is already gone and won't be returned. With basically no hesitation, Trump makes it clear he is not taking that book, sparing his own life, and in the words of Ryuk, showing that he values his own life more than his country. Trump, however, seems unbothered by this and states that he'll pretend to have the notebook, but refuse to use it for the sake of peace, making him look like a saint. Not sure if that's a shot at the real Donald Trump or just fiction, but hey, I'll let you guys be the judge. After this, a month later, Minoru would finally receive the money, causing him to suffer a heart attack from Ryuk writing his name in the book. This ending might honestly hurt more than the original. Minoru's plan was perfect. Even Ryuk agreed with that, but a rule change caused him to die despite the fact that he'd never written in the book. Light killed many during his time with the book, and so it was easier to come to terms with his death. He didn't deserve to live. Minoru, on the other hand, was a humble kid who did something that undoubtedly bettered the lives of many. He of course benefited too from his plan, but it's hard to overlook all the good he caused. No lives were taken in the process, but in the end, he still died, proving that there is no happy ending for users of the notebook. To those unfamiliar with the world of manga, this story is a one-shot, meaning a single chapter story. One-shots are often somewhat of a pilot, and many do end up being revised to later be published as a full story. This story in particular, though, despite the massive hype it's generated on the internet, is likely to end here. The authors are already in the middle of another serialization, Platinum End. The story is unfortunately released on a monthly schedule and has honestly failed to generate much buzz, but that could all change with an anime announcement or a switch to a weekly or bi-weekly schedule. It's possible that the authors could have two series going simultaneously, but that's a large task, and we've rarely seen it done in the world of manga. To end off this video, I'd like to talk a bit about the Minoru vs Light Yagami debate. Both are undeniably smart, and both are likable. However, I do think a large portion of the fandom is moving too quickly with a narrative of Minoru being smarter. The biggest problem to me is that it's unreasonable to compare Minoru to Light when Light was far more ambitious. To take on the challenge of being the source of judgment for all beings and being praised as a god is many times more challenging than attempting to use the Death Note for profit while remaining undetected. I'll give credit to Minoru. To succeed without ever writing anything is impressive, but the games are too different. Light was playing hardcore mode, Minoru was an expert at best. Light's personality also wasn't in his favor. In my opinion, he had a god complex and need for attention that hurt his chances. Minoru's calm demeanor allowed him to slow down and sit for hours before deciding what to do. It's fine to praise Minoru, but let's not forget all the stunts Light pulled off to go on a rampage for a long time while the world hunted him. One thing that wasn't explicitly stated in the story is the reasoning behind waiting 2 years before using the Death Note. The best reason I can think of for waiting is that he didn't have a bank account at the time he was approached in middle school, and so he betted on having one in a couple years. It's not legal to have an independent bank account below the age of 20 in Japan, and that restriction is similar in the US. You can, however, have an account tied to an adult as a minor. This is likely the case with Minoru. The only questionable thing is that his mom had to check with him to confirm his savings account is with Yotsuba, but other than not having a bank account, it's hard to imagine why he might have waited 2 years. That's all I have for you guys on the new Death Note story. A lot of you guys watching this video are likely new to the channel, but this is Plot Armor, and at the moment we cover everything My Hero Academia. This was a special release for us though, considering how much respect we have for Oba and Obata, the authors of Death Note. Hope you guys enjoyed it though. Thanks for watching till the end. From Plot Armor, I'm KJ. Have a great day. Goodbye.